Hey there everyone, Tesla Peg here. Now, before I show you guys all the cinematic shots that you saw of the DJI Mavic Mini, I wanted to give you guys a couple of tips and tricks that you can follow before your first flight so that you don't crash and burn the drone like I did on my first day of flight and crash super hard on the floor, in the ground. Thankfully nothing happened to my drone. The drone probably, like, I'll show you the footage. Here's the footage. I guess the propellers got stuck in the branches and then it just plummeted down onto the ground, and I think like nothing happened to my gimbal, thankfully, and my camera, everything was fine here. So what happened was the drone probably crashed like this, and these things right here, they probably saved the gimbal and the camera right here. So thankfully nothing happened to my drone. As you can see, my drone is super fine. It's working. It has been working pretty nice. You'll see all the cinematic shots at the end of this video. This is a pretty good starter drone, and I definitely recommend it. If you haven't seen my video on the unboxing and the first flight video that I did, I'll link it up here. Okay, I'll link it up here. Somewhere here. So here's tip number one. You'll see on my on a couple of cinematic shots that I took, I had to go through very tight spaces, like in between trees, in between fences. So those are pretty tight spots, and if you aren't a really good flyer, like if you're a beginner like myself, I'd definitely recommend using the propeller protectants. I mean, what are they called again? Propeller guards. You need to use the propeller guards. So if you're going in very tight spaces, remember to use the propeller guards. Like, this is like the second time I had to change the propellers. Like, I scratched the propellers a lot. So I would highly recommend, before you start flying, definitely use the propeller guards, especially when you're flying in areas like this where there's like a lot of trees here, and if you're going in between buildings, I wouldn't really recommend that. Don't go in between buildings. Use the propeller guards while you're taking cinematic shots with the drone. That way this will protect your drone from crashing. It'll kind of bump off instead of like crashing and getting stuck in a tree. You'll see at the end of this video, I had to go in between trees, I had to go in between fences. So definitely use the propeller guards when you're trying to take those kind of shots, or whenever you're flying in not in an open space where there's like a lot of trees, because if a drone hits the tree and the propeller gets stuck in the tree, you'll have to climb in the tree. And I don't know about you, but I can't climb a tree. So use the propeller guards whenever you're flying in places where there's like a lot of obstacles here and there. Now, tip number two. Tip number two is very simple. Protect the camera and the gimbal as much as possible. The gimbal is very fragile, so be very careful with it. How you open the gimbal is you just pop it up over here and you just turn it and it just comes off like that. As you can see, the gimbal is very fragile, so do not play around with it like I'm doing right now. And that's about it. Just be careful with the gimbal. So tip number three is this is a no-brainer, but charge the batteries. So if you don't charge the batteries, what's gonna happen is, say for example your phone dies. I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, that's definitely something that I'll make a video on in the future for sure. But for example, what if your battery, like phone battery, dies? How are you gonna see the drone? Like, this drone is so freaking small. If it goes up 50 to 60 meters up, it's not visible. Like, you'll have to see the camera and see where the drone is at. So have your phone fully charged before, or at least have it at like 20-30% before you connect it to the drone and get ready to fly the drone. You see there's like you can put 3 batteries in here and charge them. What happens is all 3 doesn't start charging at once. What happens is it follows a sequence with a battery that has the maximum power. So let's say this battery has like 70%, this battery has like 90%. It'll start with the battery that's on 90%, so that you always get a battery that's 100% charged. Now, tip number 4, have your return to home altitude higher than any buildings or any trees around you. Let's say a tree is like 20 meters or a building is like 20 meters. Have your return to home set to like 30 meters. That way, when the drone is coming back to you, it won't crash into a tree or a building. And the reason because is the Mavic Mini, it does, I'm sorry, I'm not following my own tip. I wasn't careful with the camera. Anyways, so the Mavic Mini doesn't come with any, what are those? So tip number 4, have your return to home altitude set higher than any buildings around. And the reason because is the Mavic Mini, when it's returning to you, it's not gonna be avoiding any obstacles, because it doesn't, like, the Mavic Mini doesn't come with any obstacle avoidance. It doesn't have any sensors around it. It only has sensors in its belly to help it land. But other than that, there's no sensors. So whenever you're calling back the Mavic Mini to your home point, the point that the Mavic Mini took off from, you want the Mavic Mini to climb up 30 or 40 meters or whatever you set your return to home altitude to, and the Mavic Mini will climb up to that altitude and get to your home point and start landing on the home point. That way it'll avoid any trees, avoid any buildings while it's coming back to the home point. Tip number 5, and this is very important. I'll have to move the camera around. Let's see, I'll have to set that up. This is a very important tip, and my last tip, tip number 5, have the drone facing the exact same direction as yourself. So if you're facing north, have the drone face north as well, so that there's no confusion with the controller sticks, and I'll show why. So I'll take off with the drone right now. So this is a very important tip, because you want the drone to be facing the exact same direction you're facing. So that way, if you press right, the drone will go right. If you press left, the drone will go left. If you have the drone, let's say, if you have the drone take off facing you, so what happens is, if you press right, it's gonna go the opposite direction that you pressed. So if you press left, it's gonna go right. So here's why this is an important tip. If I have the drone take off facing me, all my directions are reversed. So if I press front, it's gonna go the opposite direction. So as you can see, there's some trees behind the drone. So what I wanna do is, I wanna avoid the trees, right? So I wanna have the drone come to me. So if I press this, it's gonna go the opposite direction. It's gonna go and crash right into the tree. Now, before I go, I want to leave you guys with a bonus tip. So my tip is, always look at the app whenever you're flying the drone. Do not pay attention to the drone and fly it. Play around and familiarize yourself with the app. You can take a couple of quick shots, as you can see on the screen here. There's a couple you can take. There's drone, where the drone just goes back slowly and gives you all these cinematic beautiful shots without you even touching the controls. The drone does this by itself. This is the only tracking the drone can do. It can just focus on an object and do a couple of quick shots, as you can see on the screen. And then you can also take videos up to 30 frames per second at 2.7K, and also HD, you can shoot up to 60 frames per second. You can also take photos. You can also do timed photos up to 60 seconds. And if you have gotten this far, please smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button to be notified of my videos coming out every week. And then on the bottom right corner, there's EV, where you can set the exposure level to your liking. And on the bottom right corner, you can also set auto exposure lock, and it'll lock in the exposure level that it was automatically locked in. And then on the top, you can see any notification that came in. There's also more. On the top right corner, you can see the flight time and the battery life remaining. You can also see the battery temperature. And then on the top left corner you can click it to switch to modes. So there's positioning mode, there's cinematic mode, and there's sports mode. If you want to put it in cinematic modes, the drone will move significantly slower so that the gimbal can adjust easily and take those cinematic shots that you want to take. And if you press sports mode, the drone will be significantly faster. And right now I have the gimbal protector on the drone, so it is on max power load, as you can see on the top left corner on the notification bar. So the drone is significantly slower and it's usually faster than this. And again, on the left bottom corner you'll see the height, the altitude of the drone, and also the distance from the home point, and also the speed and how much the speed is reducing or increasing in terms of altitude. There's also a map button on the left bottom corner which you can press and track your drone and see where you're at, where the drone is at. It's pretty nice, and it comes very handy whenever you lose your drone. And that's about all the things that I wanted to cover on the drone. Tips, tricks, information. I hope this video helped you out, and remember to press and smash that subscribe button and like button and hit that bell notification button. And the moment I've been waiting for, the 4-minute clip that I've been dying to show you guys. My friend played a huge role. I'll link his profile down in the description box. We went to a couple of places, took some really cool drone shots, and made a video out of it. I hope you like it. Enjoy.